The past several weeks, we've witnessed hundreds of thousands of protesters marching to slogans like "Free Palestine" and "Ceasefire Now." Videos abound of people ripping down posters of Israelis being held captive in Gaza by Hamas. Some rioters even went so far as to leave their paint-soaked, bloody handprints on the gates of the White House in Washington, D.C. The loud protesters demand Israel halt its efforts to eradicate Hamas due to the high cost of civilian casualties and suffering. Some are calling for a 3 to 5 day long pause so that civilians can move to safer areas where needed food, water, and medical supplies can be brought in. Many others want a de-escalation and indefinite end to Israel's operations in Gaza. But do they understand what a ceasefire would mean for Israel and Gaza? Do they realize that ceasefires allow Hamas to reposition and rearm, meaning more conflict and more loss of life? It's time to call it out for what it is. This is the lie of the ceasefire. A quick look at past ceasefires between Hamas and Israel reveals a recurring cycle of aggression by Hamas. They agree to a ceasefire when they are weak, and then more aggression after they have had time to rearm. A common characterization of ceasefires from Israel is, "We cease, they fire." In 2005, Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip in an attempt to bring peace to the region. What followed has been a nightmare of relentless attacks from Gaza, with Hamas doing everything in their power to wage war against Israel. As Hamas was seizing power in Gaza in 2007, they fired 220 rockets at Israel within the space of a week. Israel responded with airstrikes on the rocket launching sites, officially declaring Gaza hostile territory. In late 2008, Israel responded to escalations by Hamas with Operation Cast Lead, sending troops into Gaza to stop the rocket fire. After 3 weeks of fighting, a shaky ceasefire was agreed to. At the time, Hamas leader Khaled Mashal clarified that for them, the ceasefire was, quote, "a tactic in conflict management and a phase in the framework of the resistance." In other words, he admitted that they only agreed to a ceasefire because it would better enable them to carry out future attacks against Israel. There was a period of relative calm that followed until November 2012, when more than 100 rockets were fired at Israel within 24 hours. Israel responded, striking terrorist targets for a week until another ceasefire was brokered. Israel faced a similar situation in 2014 when Hamas began firing hundreds of rockets towards civilian population centers. In addition, Israel discovered a large network of terror tunnels under the border headed toward Israeli communities that Hamas planned to use for an operation similar to what happened on October 7th, 2023. During the 6-week operation that followed, many attempts were made to implement truces and ceasefires. Hamas used the pauses in the fighting to stage surprise attacks on the IDF. In one such instance, Hamas violated a U.S.-brokered 72-hour ceasefire, launching a suicide bombing from a tunnel. The attack killed 2 soldiers, and Hamas kidnapped another before later killing him as well. In 2018, Hamas began launching incendiary kite balloons into Israel, burning thousands of acres of farmland and wooded areas. The escalations continued into 2019 when Hamas snipers fired on IDF troops near the border, and in 2021 when they bombarded Israel with rockets, each time violating ceasefires. Radical jihadist Islam is not simply a problem that Israel is dealing with. Today, we are seeing radical terrorism and its supporters raise their ugly heads all over the world. America's foundations are crumbling and its core institutions are being corrupted. Generations of Americans are being taught to hate America and its values. What can the United States do to confront this radicalism and rediscover its founding principles? And what can America learn from the world's most enduring nation, which has held on to its values for more than 3,000 years? Watch the all-new documentary, Confronting Radicals, What America Can Learn from Israel, as it exposes the radical leftist plan to transform the United States and reveals how America can rediscover its founding principles by learning from Israel's enduring commitment to freedom and morality. Based on a miraculous true story of one father and his 3-year-old son's survival after being shot by terrorists in Israel, and featuring American and Israeli experts, this film is both gripping and compelling. Visit confrontingradicals.com to watch this brand new documentary completely free today. Created by Israel 365 with production by our very own team here at the Israel Guys, we're super excited to let you know that you can watch Confronting Radicals, What America Can Learn from Israel today. Visit confrontingradicals.com or click the link in the description below to learn how you can watch Confronting Radicals today. Here's a news flash for you. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, two progressives whose history of support for Israel is up for debate, both oppose a ceasefire in this war between Israel and Hamas.
People who are calling for a ceasefire now do not understand Hamas. That is not possible. It would be such a gift to Hamas because they would spend whatever time there was a ceasefire in effect rebuilding their armaments, creating stronger positions.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, an ardent supporter of the two-state solution, said this in response to CNN's question on whether he supported the idea of a ceasefire.
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated to turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. And I think what the Arab countries in the region understand, that Hamas has got to go.
Even President Biden is against a ceasefire. In an op-ed for the Washington Post, he wrote that Hamas would use a ceasefire as an opportunity to rebuild their stockpile of rockets, reposition fighters, and restart the killing by attacking innocents again. As long as Hamas clings to its ideology of destruction, a ceasefire is not peace. He went on to say, if Hamas cared at all for Palestinian lives, it would release all the hostages, give up arms, and surrender the leaders and those responsible for October 7th. The point is, when progressive world leaders and politicians who often disagree with Israel's policies side with Israel, we should pay attention. Even those who have repeatedly called for a two-state solution and pressured Israel into unrealistic concessions in the name of peace see clearly that the only solution to this war is for Hamas to be eradicated. Here's another reason why, after October 7th, a ceasefire can never be an option with Hamas. Hamas leaders have boldly said on camera that they do not care about the people of Gaza and want to perpetually be at war with Israel. A few weeks ago, several senior Hamas terrorists said that the October 7th attack on Israel was not aimed at securing concessions from Israel to benefit the people of Gaza, but to change the entire equation of the Arab-Israeli conflict by creating a permanent state of war with Israel on each of the Jewish states' borders. Hamas media consultant Tahir El-Anunu said, I hope that the state of war with Israel will become permanent on all the borders and that the Arab world will stand with us. A senior Hamas leader in Lebanon, Ghazi Hamad, said, we must teach Israel a lesson and we will do it twice and 3 times. The Al-Aqsa flood is just the first time and there will be a second, a third, a fourth. As we have seen, Hamas does not care one bit about their own people. All they care about is waging war against Israel by any means possible until it ceases to exist. Hamas even attacked an evacuation corridor that Israel set up to allow Gazans to safely leave the areas where the fighting is taking place. A ceasefire is exactly what Hamas wants. Every other time they've attacked Israel and then cried to the world when Israel retaliated, a ceasefire has been obtained and their goals met. They do not want a ceasefire to help their own people or to allow humanitarian aid to come into Gaza. They want a ceasefire to escape the retribution that they knew would happen when they committed the atrocities of October 7th. After too much blood, time, and money, Israel finally has Hamas in their clutches, and a ceasefire would allow time for Hamas to escape, rearm, and then attack Israel once again. This is why a ceasefire can never be an option. This is the lie of the ceasefire.